Inside this box is supposed to be Hendrickson's Septuaginta, a reader's edition. There should be 2 hardcover blue volumes, and it's supposed to be the reader's edition to the Septuagint. So we'll see what we actually have. Material. A lot of excess packing material. This is a really large box with these. So let's look at them. They come in plastic, 2 volumes. The price at Christian Book Distributors when I bought it was $65. So in the review video to follow, which you will see immediately, and which I might make in a week or 2, we'll take a look at the inside of these. For this week's review, we'll be taking a look at a 2-volume set recently published by Hendrickson, the Septuaginta Reader's Edition. This is volume 1, and as you can see, it's a blue cloth-covered hardback with a partial dust jacket, and if there's anything I dislike about it, it's the partial dust jacket. Would prefer to have a full dust jacket or no dust jacket at all. Here's some information on the back. We'll take a look at most of this information. The ISBN for the 2-volume set. When you order that, you get both volumes. Okay. Volume 1, is 9.5 inches tall, 6 5/8 inches wide, and 2 7/16 inches thick. Volume 2 here differs from it only in thickness. It is 2 3/16 inches thick, so it's a 1/4 of an inch thinner than volume 1. Now, to give you a sense for how big that is, we'll do a size comparison here with a few Bibles, and I'll move this one off to the side so I'll have room to do the comparison in. Right, so the Septuaginta, volume 1 on top, and the English Standard Version Study Bible on the bottom. And the ESV Study Bible is wider, but not as thick. Here is the UBS 5 Reader's Edition. Same height, same width, and of course the UBS 5 Reader's Edition is only the New Testament, so it's considerably thinner. And here is the Deutsche Bibelgesellschaft Ralph's Septuagint. So making this book, we've taken the material that's in the small volume, much shorter, thinner, and not as wide, taken the material from the small volume and stretched it out into these 2 very large volumes, and then added material at the bottom of each page to help the reader with vocabulary and lexical information. So we've given you the dimensions. Let's not make you wait any longer. Let's open it up so you can see the basic layout. What you have here is a single column of text, and it is 121 millimeters across. I counted as many as 81 characters in each line. That's including a space as a character. The page dimensions are from top to bottom 235 millimeters, and that's 9 1/4 inches. From left to right it's 158 millimeters wide. Take a look at margins. The top of the page, it varies a bit, but it is from the top of the line here, say the top of this mu, capital mu, to the edge of the line, it's somewhere between 19 and 21 millimeters. At the bottom of the page, I get 13 millimeters. The inner margin can be as many as 20 millimeters, and the outer margin is in the range of 15 to 16. The font here in the text, the capitals, are about a 10-point symbol font. I think we should be able to show that here. I put the 10-point pi next to the mu. You can see that it's roughly the same height. Lowercase letters match, to my eye at least, a little bit better at about 9.5 points in the symbol font. The line height, I think you can tell that spacing is very generous. The line height is 4.6 millimeters. That's 13 points. So you've got essentially a 10-point font with a 13-point line height. There are verse numbers here inside the text, so they're a bit bold, so they stand out. You can find which verse you're in fairly easily. It is not line matched, and perhaps we can show that as well. Just holding the paper up, and so you can see the light coming through from the other side. Having a little trouble getting only one sheet. Here we go. And so maybe you see that there. Don't want to zoom in too much and lose my focus. But you should be seeing there that the lines are not quite matched. There's some print showing up here, for instance, from a line on the other page. You can see print here. So definitely not line matched. Each page has the vocabulary apparatus at the bottom of the page. So that's what you're seeing here. It's in 2 columns. The vocabulary apparatus includes words that appear in the Septuagint fewer than 100 times and in the Greek New Testament fewer than 30 times. It's in these 2 columns here. It includes the parsing information here. For instance, here it's telling you the verb and its present active imperative third person singular. There are no real definitions. They give what they call a gloss. So here at Thugater, they have daughter. Sometimes you'll have the same word in adjacent pages, and the definition, that is, the gloss that they give, will be slightly different depending on the meaning and context. Font here is about 9.5 points times New Equivalent, times New Roman Equivalent. Each book of the Bible begins on its own page. So let's look at the beginning of Numbers here. Flip over and we'll show you what that looks like. So here's the starting page of Numbers. There are book titles in the center top of the page. The page number is over here on the inner top, and the book contents are in the outer top. So it's the first full verse on a page, verse 19 of chapter 1, and then the last verse that begins on the page. So here we are, verse 26 of chapter 1. There are headings in the text. You may have seen some of those already. Headings in the text are about 10 points times New Roman Equivalent. There is an introduction. And in fact, the introduction, I think this is a very nice feature of the book, is that the introduction is repeated in each volume, as is the glossary. The introduction is in about a 10.5 point font. There are no separate book introductions here. Let's talk about the paper. Paper is as you would expect in a hardback, is fairly thick. I measure it to be 62 micrometers thick. I estimate the paper weight at 56.6 GSM, so it's around 56, 57 GSM or so. When I look to see if I can find a reflection off the paper, see if it shines, I get a sheen off it. All I really see is this kind of a diffuse glare, which is what you get off some rough surfaced paper. It feels smooth to the touch, but you don't have a shine here, so you don't have to worry that much about the camera eye paper angle. Color-wise, it's an off-white. I find that better than a total white. It's fairly attractive. There is some show-through. You can see it here between the paragraphs. So you can see text coming through from the next page over, but it really is fairly mild. It's not especially distracting to me. There's this book has a sewn binding, and it does lie flat. So here we are in Genesis, and the book lies completely flat. A little bit of a bend to it. It does the same in volume 2 here in the Psalms. The book has very attractive blue and white head and tail bands. Each volume has 2 dark blue ribbon markers. I measure them to be 340 millimeters long, but they're only 6 millimeters wide, so they're roughly 1/4 of an inch wide. There are no maps, no concordance, but as I mentioned, the glossary, which has all the words that occur both over 100 times in the Septuagint and over 30 times in the Greek New Testament. They say approximately 330 words. This glossary appears in both volumes, so that is actually quite helpful. You can have one volume open and reading from it, and then take a look at the glossary from the other volume, or the introduction from the other volume if you're interested in particular meanings of some symbols that are appearing, for instance. The glossary is 14 pages long. As you see, it's in 2 columns. The font is roughly 9.5 to 10 points, Times New Roman equivalent. And I think that's about it for the summary of the details. So we'll open it up from the beginning and look at things like the title page and the copyright page. Before we get inside it, I just want to show briefly what I think might be a bit of a manufacturing flaw, kind of a workmanship issue here, where the tailband is glued on volume 2. It's kind of sloppy. There's a glue showing here on the left. There's a glue hair sticking up along the edge. Nothing that impairs the functionality of the book. It's just not especially attractive workmanship. Okay, so let's look inside. You have paper on the inside of the boards. So there's 1 page of fairly heavy paper here. I like the look of it. The brownish look with the speckles is attractive. A title page that says Septuagint, and then you have these 2 pages opposing each other here. This says the Old Covenant according to the 70. This says a Reader's edition of the Readers. This is book 1, or tome 1, volume 1 there. They didn't put the author's names in Greek to the left. And it appears to be a co-publication of Hendrickson and the Deutsche Bibelgesellschaft. So this is the same symbol that you see, for instance, here on the smaller volume of copy of Ralph's Septuagint. Next page should be the copyright page, and let's just zoom in a little bit on that. Alright, so Reader's Edition, copyright 2018. Greek text is Rolf's text. Here's the ISBN My Blue Cloth hardcover 2-volume set. It also comes in black, Flexisoft, and then apparently it's available probably in Europe from the German publisher. This is a very stern statement that I find in Hendrickson Bibles. I don't find anything quite so severe looking in other publishers, so I generally just review other publishers' works. But when I review a Hendrickson Bible, for instance, when I reviewed their 1560 facsimile of the Geneva Bible, I sent them an email and asked permission first. And I asked permission to review this 2-volume set, and they said yes. I also asked them permission to review their hardback Westcott and Hort Greek New Testament, and they offered to send me their new paperback edition, but they refused to give me permission to review the hardback, which I only bought in July. They say it's no longer available, so I guess they don't want me to review it. It's not clear why. Down below, Library of Cost Cataloging and Publication Data. This is the first printing from November 2008, and it's printed in China. Here we are at the table of contents. Alright, so we have the introduction, which is broken into 5 sections. Then, books of the Bible in the normal order, fairly much. Ezra. And so you have, this is the first non-canonical book. Second Esdras is Ezra Nehemiah, and this is First Esdras, which is not in the Protestant canon. Esther. Then we have other apocryphal books as well. Those are all in Volume 1, along with the 4 books of the Maccabees. So I think the Catholic Bibles only include 1 and 2 normally. Volume 2 has the same introduction again as I mentioned earlier, and it begins with the Psalms. Then it has the Prayer of Manasseh broken out separately. Then more books. You have wisdom books, Wisdom of Solomon, Wisdom of Ben Sirach, Psalms, Minor Prophets, and continuing Minor Prophets after that, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Baruch, and Lamentations, the Epistle, Ezekiel, Susanna, and Daniel with Bel and the Dragon, and then the Glossary again. So the Glossary as well as the introduction are in both volumes. We will walk our way through the introduction in just a moment. First I'll do some font comparisons, but before I do, I want to mention that Hendrickson did offer to send me a paperback copy of their Westcott and Hort Greek New Testament, but I'm just not comfortable with reviewing copies that I've been provided for free. I would rather review the ones that I purchased with my own money. Okay, our Hendrickson Reader's Edition of the Septuagint on the left, and this is Rolf's Septuagint on the right. So there's your font comparison for those two. You also get a sense for the paper color. Paper on the Septuagint Reader's Edition is a bit less yellow than at least on my copy of Rolf's Septuagint, but the font is larger. They seem stylistically to be somewhat similar. Alright, that's comparison 1. Here is the UBS 5 Reader's Edition. It's on the right. The font there looks to be about a full point larger in the Reader's Edition than it is in the Septuagint on the left. Okay. This is the NA 28, Nestle-Aland 28th edition New Testament. It has rather large margins there, so it's somewhat difficult to show them at the same time. And perhaps I'll be able to contort this and put it under sheet or two here, and then slide things over so that you can see them side by side a little better. So they're actually similar in size. Just to my eye, I think the NA28 is just slightly larger. Okay, and then finally, see if we can do that same thing here with, this is the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. I'm a big fan of the Tyndale House. And you see both fonts there at the same time. So this is just some comparisons of fonts to try to give you a sense for how readable this font is. And I think it's, here again, it looks like it's slightly smaller than the Tyndale House, but it doesn't look like it would be a difficult reading experience at all. Everything seems to be printed nicely, relatively darkly, crisply. Everything seems to be, all the diacritical marks seem to be printed clearly enough. I will walk you through the introduction before we're finished. They mention here at the bottom of the first page about Septuaginta Reader's Edition that part of the motivation for it has been an explosion of energy in the study of the New Testament's intertextual use of the Old Testament Hebrew Bible. I actually, as an amateur, did a study just out of curiosity in the 1999-2000 time frame. I will put a link to my work, which is still available in PDF and HTML form on the internet in the comments section or in the description of the video. Here we have a section on how to use the edition. They let us know here that the text is the Rolf's Hanhart text from 2006, which I believe is the blue volume that I've been showing in this video. They don't use the Göttingen edition, and they explain why. They mention here that the Reader's Edition includes the Prayer of Manasseh, which is the 12th ode, but they've chosen not to include the 13 other odes in Rolf's Hanhart because, although they appear in Codex Alexandrinus, they're elsewhere in the Old Testament or in the New Testament. Chapters and verses, they point out, and this is a nice little key to have, differences in the psalm numbering, which is a common experience to Septuagint readers and those also who read the older Roman Catholic Bibles. And then Jeremiah really is an interesting mapping. It's very complicated, but they have it summarized here. So Jeremiah in the Septuagint is arranged differently than Jeremiah in the Hebrew Bible. I think it's also a bit shorter, if I remember correctly. Then the key, of course, this is a Reader's Edition, so the key benefit to it is that there is this vocabulary apparatus, and so they give you the criteria for inclusion at the top of page Romanet 13, and essentially more than 100 appears 100 times or fewer in the Septuagint, 30 times or fewer in the UBS New Testament, and then other reasons. It might be an unfamiliar form, it could be a special occurrence that's a phrase or idiom that's uncommon. They talk about their glosses here, which is what they have instead of a full definition. It's just a one-word or few-word summary of what the meaning is in English in the context. Parsing information and abbreviations, which they give on page Romanet 15. So here we are. And then abbreviations used in the parsing. So it's good to have this introductory material with you in the other volume while you're reading from one volume, so you can have the introduction open and remind yourself of what the abbreviations mean. They do use parentheses in the vocabulary apparatus, and they give you some examples here on the right of how that might be done. Question marks for an uncertainty about a possible gloss. combinations of two words, symbol CR, and so forth. So we won't belabor that. They say they have introduced headings and text divisions, so the text here is broken up considerably more than in the Rolf's Septuagint. Then they tell you about the glossary at the back. Here's an interesting section about what is the Septuagint, and they mention in this paragraph that it is potentially misleading to refer to the Septuagint. I would encourage you to watch a video that's on YouTube entitled "Why I Don't Believe in the Septuagint" by Dr. Peter Williams. His name here is in footnote 7 at the bottom of the page, and I think he's the same person. I believe he's also one of the editors of the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. But do a search for "Why I Don't Believe in the Septuagint" by Dr. Peter Williams. I think his main points there, I actually think his title is just meant to grab your attention. I think he makes some very good points in the video. Is there such a thing as Septuagint Greek and the state of lexicography for the Greek Old Testament? Then some things for further reading and a bibliography. And after that, you're at acknowledgments, and you're done. We're back to Genesis, and it's time to conclude the video. Another excellent video resource on the Septuagint is a video called The Septuagint, Parens Around LXX, by J.F. Hultin, Hultin. I'll put a link to that below as well. I believe this is Dr. Hultin, who's a professor at Yale. I could be wrong on that, but that's my speculation. Well, I did mention one negative thing earlier, and it's this partial dust jacket. I would prefer a full dust jacket because then I could put that in an archival book cover. They make them 9.5 inches tall, and that would work perfectly. It would keep this safe, and it would also protect these very nice, sturdy cloth over board covers. But as it is, I think I'm going to have to make my own full-size dust jacket so that I can put this partial sleeve around that and then put the combination in an archival dust jacket cover to protect the book. I'm really excited about this. I taught myself, or began to learn Greek in the late 90s, and let it lapse over the decades. And more recently, I've been reading the Greek New Testament in Greek again, and I'm getting a little better. And now that I have this 2-volume edition, I think it's going to be quite a lot of fun to build the vocabulary and get used to all the endings of the verbs and the participles and the infinitives and the different case endings again, and try to become adept at it. At least maybe I'll be able to read this with relative ease by the time I make it to the pine box. I really do like it. I think this is well done. One thing I wanted to point out, I forgot to, I'm not sure you can see it there on the camera, is the greenish hue there at the gutter. This seems to be fairly common these days in Chinese printed Bibles and also Korean printed Bibles. It's just that the color seems to be much more intense down here in the gutter. So I have a blue New American Standard, blue paper New American Standard side column reference, and it glows blue. I have another one that's greenish yellow like this. Very nice font, well printed, not very much show through, sturdy construction. I'm not sure what else to say, except that definitely 2 thumbs up from me for this edition of the Septuagint Reader's Edition. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video or any of my videos, please, I encourage you to subscribe and to like the video. And hit the bell for notifications if you think you'd like to be notified of future ones. Thanks very much.